Thank you. I'm mildly shitting myself. So we've had a little technical difficulty. The Canva program that we were using, we don't have enough internet. So I've got it as an MP4, so I'm going to lurk around the computer a bit more than what I would have liked to have, but let's get into it. This is my young family, my wife Amber over here. I drag them all over Australia in a caravan, building contours and ponds and rehydrating farmland. She's very patient. So our farm journey started in a suburban backyard that was full of funnel webs, 3 doors down from the last death in Australia. We didn't want to use chemicals to kill the funnel webs, so we brought chickens. And from those chickens, we bought more chickens. And we leased 15 acres at Wilton, and we had a roaring egg trade because we were on the back of a new estate. So every Sunday afternoon, I'd drive around with a big stack of eggs in the passenger seat, and we'd just go from house to house selling the eggs. I soon realised it wasn't a good way of making a living. So when we got into the cattle industry, we went all out and we bought a 6x4 box trailer off Gumtree. Now, this animal here, he's the same animal that was in that last slide. He's Steve. He's had a few brushes with the law. When we're at Wilton, we're on the back of a new estate, and I'd see these videos up on the community page of Steve eating people's rose bushes. I had a phone call from the police one day and said, "Oh, do you have a red and white cow?" I said, "Oh, I do." He said, "Oh, he's walking down the bike lane on the Hume Highway." Another time we got home and he was at the front gate with a highway patrol parked behind him, with him looking at us going like, "What's wrong? Like, hurry up and open the gate and let me back in." So I think he's been here before. He absolutely shits me, but I have a bit of a love for him and a bit of a soft spot, so he'll die on our farm. So this is Charlie Arnott. So when we were at Wilton, we come across Charlie Arnott's podcast, and then we realised that he did a biodynamics course. So Amber and I went across to the Southern Highlands and did a biodynamics course, and it really opened our eyes up with how we could farm without chemicals and taking our shoes off, looking at the stars, the moon cycles, and getting in sync with our landscape instead of spraying chemicals over it and just destroying it. So from Charlie Arnott, we come across the Tarwin Park training course for natural sequence farming. That was held at Burrawa at Charlie's property. This information that I'm talking about, Peter Andrews, this old bloke here that's rousing on us, he's been doing this for about 50 years. He's had scientists study this. This isn't something that I've brewed up at the pub. Some of it is, but anyway. So this is Peter's work. That's Peter's son there, Stuart, that does Tarwin Park training. He's the man that's trained me to what I'm doing today. It's Peter's information, but Stuart's taken me under his wing and put a lot of effort into me. So after doing the Tarwin Park training course, we bought our own little farm. We bought 100 acres in Lagan, New South Wales. We're 45 minutes inland from Goulburn, near Crookwell, 10 minutes from Crookwell. The house sits at 980 metres above sea level, hence the snow. This is a photo of Stuart that I remind him I've been leaning on him to adopt me, but he says I'm too risky, so I'll just keep him as a mate and a mentor. So the five pillars of natural sequence farming is slow the flow, let all plants grow, careful where the animals go, filtration is a must know, return to the top to recycle the lot. So these 5 pillars, they're all part of the jobs that I've been working on, and that's the basis of natural sequence farming, is those 5 pillars. This is Dr. Pran's property. So these are tools that I use before or when I go to a farm to assess it. So what I'm looking at here is there's 10 metres elevation change in these lines. So I use these lines to work out where we should put structures in, where there's fertility, where we can move water. That's a river system there. This is the other tool that I use. So this is a laser level. This shoots a beam out to my receiver. That will run 400 metres out this way, and it'll run 400 metres out the opposite way. So as I walk the paddock, I've chosen a spot where there's a suitable spot to put a contour. So I walk around with a laser level, and it's got set to being at 20 mil on point. So once it starts to beep and it makes the right noise, I put a mark on the ground. And when I'm in the excavator and I'm working, they're the marks that I'm consistently looking for as I'm working, because you think you can try to do it by eye. I've been doing this for years and I still sit in the machine and I look at the marks and I go, fuck, I hope that's calibrated because that looks like it's going downhill. But you trust the gear. It's a few $1,000 laser level and it's never let me down since. That's at Little Plains. It's one of Charlie Arnott's blocks. This is another tool that I use. So what I'm showing you here just quickly is that I put the dirt down at the bottom, and then each time I'm digging, I'm taking the grass and I'm laying the grass back along the top. When there's no vegetation, that's not possible, but by laying that grass across the top, it means after a couple of rain events, your contour starts to vegetate and it all holds back together. So this is Talagander. This is John's farm. Man up the back there, throw your arm up. He's been doing this work with me hand in hand, running around with a laser level, going getting compost, doing the whole lot. It's near Braidwood, New South Wales. So this is what I started with at John's place. The first time I got there, I'm just going to take this speaker off because I think this is something that we need to hear.
It should be the softest fertile soil on the block. As hard as a cat's head.
So that's on a floodplain after the wettest 2 or 3 years we'd had since the 50s. It's not wet and it's like concrete. It's dead. There's no microbes, no worms, nothing's going on.
This contour here, compost heap. The compost heap we're going to put here, putting water and fertility out of here, will change that.
And sorry about some of these videos. A lot of these videos were just hanging out of the side of an excavator, or they were just Instagram stories that I never thought I'd be up here talking about, travelling around the country, building this sort of stuff. So this is the same floodplain, just looking top to bottom before we've done any work. John's put a couple of little structures in there with some sticks and stuff, but nothing too crazy. This is a pond that I've put in. Now the reason I put this pond in, we need to get water back out onto this floodplain. This is an erosion gully. You can see the erosion here. And what's happening with this erosion, it's like a microbial network cutting an A4 sheet of paper and putting half of the A4 sheet of paper over there and the other half over here, and wondering why those microbes don't talk to each other anymore. It's because of those edges there, that there's no fertility and there's no hydrology linking it all together anymore. So now putting this pond in, the messages from the microbes over here can now talk over here and spread all back out to here and spread water laterally out across the landscape. So that's the same spot. That's that pond that I was just talking about then. So what we've got here is, by backing this section up here, it's now pushed water about 160 metres all the way back up to there. It took me 4 hours to put that in there. It's not, not a lot of effort. Now this water here, once that's full, it comes out this spillway and starts to rehydrate this floodplain. Now what we've got up here, we've got a bit of a Y in the creek. So when we want to put some water into this contour is what rehydrates the whole top section of the floodplain. There's a worm farm here and a worm farm there, and we've got another compost heap. So we have a spillway here that's pushing water down through the worm farm, pushing the microbes and all the fertility back out onto the floodplain. Now when this floodplain is absolutely soaked and it's had enough water, John comes up in the corner, he goes down there most weekends, comes up in here, stacks a half a dozen rocks, which pushes the water back down into here and starts filling these ponds, and it comes back down into here and floods the bottom part of the floodplain. We do have some other ponds up here that are fed by a 50mm bit of polypipe from the creek. So there's a pond up the back here we can't see, which feeds this pond, and then that feeds this pond, and once it's all full, pushes back out through here. This work here to this video I'm about to show you, there's 6 months difference. That's the same floodplain. Bit of biodynamic preps on some compost piles, those worm farms, roadkill, blackberry, whatever we could find, weather damaged hay put in piles. When you get the hydrology right, that's how quick this can happen. It doesn't always react this fast, but being a floodplain and a fertile floodplain, it was just missing a bit of biology and it was missing the hydrology. And you can hear the frogs. Like when we were working down there, we were working till dark. You didn't hear any frogs. And in a matter of 6 months, they're back. So this is a contour that's on the floodplain. That's the contour that I was talking about that ran around the back. This is that contour. When I dug it, it was dirt. There was no vegetation. A little bit of rain, fixed the hydrology, bit of biodynamic preps, a bit of compost, and look what the landscape's done. No chemicals. Something that I've learnt with this work, it's amazing what you can learn when you take your shoes off and you walk around, and you can walk on a farmer's paddock and he might tell you rotationally grazed. You can feel it under your feet. You can feel things are locked up. You can feel it's tight. And then you can walk into another paddock or a neighbour's paddock and it feels spongy. You can tell the management differences. Just sometimes we've got to take the blinkers off, take our shoes off, piss your phone off and just walk around and just feel things and start to look at things and just start to slow down, get back in tune. So this is Hannah Minnow. This is Charlie's home block. Some of these slides are little plains. He's owned little plains for about 15 years. The better country is Hannah Minnow in the slides, and the erosion is little plains. So this doesn't look like much. This is a little bit of erosion. It's probably taken a couple of years to get to that. Cattle are quite curious of what I'm up to there. You can see the water bottle there. It's probably a foot and a half. You wouldn't think it's much. You wouldn't think you need to do anything about it. You can just leave it. Well, this turns into this. That's what happens when you don't manage those little cuts. They turn into this. Now, this hasn't happened overnight, and this isn't Charlie's management. He's bought the property. Sheep have been on there for 100 years, set, stocked, droughts, floods. This has got nothing to do with Charlie's management, but he's putting the effort in and paying me to rectify this. So this is the erosion here and some of the work that I've been putting in. I'll pause a couple of times to start pointing some stuff out that might not be clear to everybody. So what we've got here is we've got a pond here. So just like at John's place where we had a pond at the bottom, that pond will eventually fill up with water. Set it with a laser level. It'll eventually spill water out to here. Now I've got another pond here. This water here will back up all the way to there. This pond here, I know it's hard to see, but that then backs this water up to this tree, and I've got another pond. And what we're doing is we've got water touching water. The microbial network can spread. The fertility that's coming from up the top here, when we start dropping some weather damaged bales of hay, chicken shit, like whatever we can get to start to accelerate the biological process and the fertility. So as we come further up, there's a pond to a pond. You can see the pond here. There's another pond that's up over here. There's another pond. So what we're having is this water up in this catchment, instead of it just rushing down, it's going pond to pond to pond to pond. We're slowing the flow. We're slowing the intensity down. So what we've got here is I've just put this little bank in here just to stall this water up a little bit, spill it out this corner where there's a bit of vegetation because we've lost a lot of vegetation and it's cut down to bedrock there. So that's just a little pond, stall this water up just a little bit. But with this contour here, when you have 100 mil of rain in 24 hours, this contour has to fill, and there's no spillways in this contour until I get out over the corner over here, meaning that the water that leaches through this will be so slow and so subtle that we're not going to cause any more erosion. We're going to start to repair it. Now this erosion's been fenced off for 15 years and it's got so bad that on the opposite side over here, the erosion went all the way across and it swallowed the fence. They had to move the fence 40 metres away. So sometimes just fencing it off, it doesn't fix it. When the damage is done and it's really bad, sometimes we've got to step in and do something. So this will show the contour runs, and this is level. All of this, everything that I'm building is dead level. It's within 10 or 20 mil. Even if I put a contour in 15 kilometres long, it's wouldn't be any more than that far out. If you wanted to and you had the right landscape, you could move this water 100 kilometres, 200 kilometres. You can see a bit of water. Had 20 mil of rain overnight when I was building it. It's quite light country. Would have been good in its day, but before white fellas come in and flogged it to death. Nah, not at the moment. So there'll be little puddles. So 20 mil of rain will put a little bit of water in it, and what we can see here is this is a natural sequence. That this is sort of stuff that I'm looking at when I fly a drone over your farm. That's rushes. That's telling me that they got wet feet, that there's water sitting there. There's a little bit of loss of oxygen, that the rushes can outcompete the grass. So when I'm walking around and I'm thinking, where am I going to put a contour? They're a telltale sign of where I'm going to put a contour, because there's water there and we want to spread that water further out of the landscape. The next stage with that erosion is to bring some weather damaged hay and just start dropping it in. We won't spread it out, just cut the baling twine off and just leave it there. And you'll find after about 12 months there'll be worms that'll come back. You don't need to put the worms there. They're there, they've just gone so far down in the ground that they're non-existent to the human eye, or when you're digging with the excavator, you're only a foot and a half down, you don't see any of them. I dug there for 3 days and didn't see one worm. So this is at Hanamino. This section here is some erosion that we need to put some ponds in later on, but this whole catchment here used to run down here, and it used to flood Charlie's house and cause a massive issues down here. So what I've done is I've put a pond in, and we're going to link this up to the main water source that Charlie uses for stock water. So now this whole catchment here never helped to fill this dam. From about there, it would run down here. So that contour now and that pond fills this dam. When this dam's full, it can start to push the water back out of this contour. But the benefit we have now, this is all catchment. Everywhere here will fill this dam, all of that. So now having a catchment that was 100 acres, it's 400 or 500 acres. And when it's water that you use to feed for your livestock, it's pretty important that you keep it full. So now this is full of water, so that dam is full, and it's now starting to push this water back out of the contour, and it'll start to spill out these spillways to help with production to grow more grass. Because most of the farmers that I'm working for, they want more production, they want to grow more grass. They've got to justify paying me to do this sort of work, and on average we're getting a 25% production increase. So if you're turning 1,000 steers off a year and you can turn off another 250, that might be the difference between making money or not. Has anyone been to Hanamino here? You've been here? All right, so what you'll notice now, the water from the shearing shed, when those tanks are full, end up in this contour and they'll fill that dam. And that's 1.5 k's away from where that dam is. So it comes down here, runs down this gully, fills this pond up. Once that pond's full, a bit of water will go that way, and the water will start making its way back to the dam. And even the water off that whole road now goes underneath the pipe here and comes into this contour, and it helps fill that dam. We've got to utilise every drop of rain that we're getting on our farms. You know, the extremes with the drought now, you get 20 mil of rain, you want to utilise that 20 mil of rain. So this is looking back up at the shearing shed that I'm talking about. So the tanks up there, when they're full, they end up filling that dam 1.5 k's away on the other side of the hill. So this is showing what I'm talking about when the contour starts to fill and then it pushes the water into the dam, and then when the dam's full, it pushes it back out the contour. I started building this contour, went and had lunch, and we had about 25 mil of rain. This is showing what I mean, how subtly the water starts to fill the dam. You can see the colour, just the difference in the colour in the water. So this is water, it was already in the dam, it's not too murky, but obviously because I've just been excavating it, it's a bit silty. And now you can see that after that rain event, you can see the contour's full, and now it's starting to push the water back into the dam to fill the dam. And when the dam's full, it goes back out the other way, back out in your paddock. This is a contour at Charlie's I built a few years ago. Once they're vegetated, they just become a part of the landscape. Don't have to do anything with it. Preferably when I put them in, if you can keep the stock off them for a few months, get the grass kick-started and get the process happening, that's ideal. Sometimes I put contours through the whole part of the farm and you don't have an option. Well, you put the cattle in, or you put a hot wire in the base of this and just try to keep them from walking on the bank and squashing the bank down. This is Green Hills, Central West. It's at Kalula. So what we've got here is, this is a main dam at Matt's place. He wants to make this dam link to this dam, and he wants a big island in the middle here so he can have wetland birds come back and start laying without being eaten by the foxes. So what we have here, that's a 23-tonne excavator, and I've been at this for a week. It doesn't look like much, but we shifted a lot of earth. Before we had rain, I dug about 2 foot out of this whole area. We had a big part of erosion there that was starting to cut the back of the bank out. So we excavated all this and trucked it around the back of here and tipped it and fixed that erosion. And then I've kept digging the edges out. And the reason that I've dug it so deep and so wide is that in this next slide, I'll show you why we've done this. So that's it. It's not at capacity. It's probably got another 80 centimetres to go. You can see the ring of the old dam there. I've made that 3 metres there, and at a minimum 1.2 metres, so that when the Kumbunji grows here, the Kumbunji doesn't like to grow in more than about 1.2 metres of water. So that'll never vegetate enough that the foxes can walk across the Kumbunji and go and eat the wetland birds or the birds that are trying to nest there. So what we have is weather damaged hay again, trees planted all over it, and that'll just be a little oasis that the birds can go and nest and not be eaten by the foxes or the wild cats. So then after it's full, it pushes out this contour here. I've got a spillway here and a spillway here to fill these ponds. Now these spillways that I've put in all along here, once the dam's full, is same as this here. So in heavy rain, some of your water comes around the back and the other comes out these spillways, fills the pond I put in, then that pond fills this pond, that pond fills this pond. And what I've done with this section here, I used gabion baskets. You've seen the wire baskets on the side of the highway full of rocks. We've used these in the back of here and just filled it with rocks and hay, so that'll vegetate and it'll just leak. So it means in a massive rain event that the water in here, it eventually ends up in the river. It just might take a week to get there. And this is the same river that links to Bathurst that's helping for the flooding when they had the last flood. This is where the water's coming from, this catchment. Yeah. There's it's a pretty bold statement, but I'll show you a contour in a minute that if every 1,000 acre property in that catchment had a 2.5 kilometre contour, there's 2.5 million litres in that contour. That's 2.5 million tonnes that we're slowing from rushing down the river. Common sense would say if you had 200 of those contours, do you think you'd have a flood in Bathurst? Yeah. We'd be jumping on Noah's Ark's boat if you did after you put those contours in. So look, it is a big statement, but we could reduce it. You wouldn't have, like in Lismore, when the flood just roared up and 2 hours later it dropped. You'd still have a flood. What you would notice is the flood would just incrementally come up. Once all the contours and all the ponds and everything are full and they start to spill out, the flood water will rise. It just doesn't happen in 2 hours. So this is the contour that I was talking about. It's 2.5 kilometres long. And I've modified, there's an old quarry here. All the water from this quarry was rushing down the road and destroying the road. So I've tapped into that quarry, put this water into Matt's place. Now that quarry runs this water all the way out over this, rehydrates a quarter of his farm. This is all level, remember? Everything's built level. Goes all the way around, links all the way up here, and goes out of the screen. It's 2.5 kilometres long, 2.5 million litres of water that was rushing down here, down the quarry, causing issues. Now put it out on his paddocks to grow a bit of grass for him. Now this is the same again. This is on the opposite side of the quarry. That's the road that links into it. Water runs in here, runs off the road, causing erosion all through here. So we've got some stacks of hay through there to get a bit of biology, get some grass is starting to grow. So instead of this water now rushing all the way down here, there's a bit of erosion down here. It ends up going over the top of the road. We've put this water into this contour and now starting to rehydrate his paddock from water that was giving him grief in the corner of the paddock. So this is something similar to John's with putting the pond in the erosion gully. We put a new dam in. There's not a very big catchment where this is. So now you put a pond in. This dam's never run dry, so there's no issues with pinching a bit of water from it. This pond fills, runs down the contour, fills the dam. This spillway here is the same as this spillway, is the same as this spillway. So once it's all full, spills water back into that dam, runs a bit of water down the paddock, and you can start to see the stream where the water's starting to run down there and the change in the colour in the grass. This is Levenvale, which is Bellow Beath on the mid-north coast. High rainfall. This is before we started. Now, contours are quite important in this high rainfall country. They're certified organic and they're rotationally grazing their cattle. If they get 200 mil of rain, what do you think happens to the cow shit up the top of the hill there? Washes down into the river. So that's the contours put in here. So that's a gully there that gets massive amounts of water causing issues here. The dam blew out, so the dam had to be fixed. So what we've done is contour in here, and the spillways are on the ridges. And the reason they're on the ridges, your ridge is shaped like that, gullies like that. So when you've got a ridge and you put the water out over a ridge, it subtly goes this way and it goes that way and it goes that way, and it's spreading out really slowly. So what I've done here is you've got these gullies, and now I've got spillways here. So the water that was rushing down the gully is now hydrating this area now. This contour here is the same height as this. Unfortunately, they don't own this block of land, so we just had to skip that bit out. This here is terra firma organic chicken shit. So being certified organic, I can't bring straw in, nothing that's not certified organic. So it's an expensive way to put the fertility up the top, but it is what it is. That's, they're certified organic, so they've got to comply. Same thing again, contour, bit of a gully picking the water up, another gully pond, spilling it on a ridge, 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 the whole way. It's the same height all the way around. Once we finish there, it'll actually link past the little Airbnb, and it'll come all the way back around and link all the way back around here and come back up over here. You'll link the whole lot together. So this here is a pond. It's an old dairy. That pipe there, that's all the runoff from the dairy, and then it runs into there, goes out that pipe, 200 metres down there, it goes straight in the river. That's a contour we put in, and I've got a little video here that I'll explain what I built. What we've got here is, that was a pond there that had previously been catching all the shit and piss out of the dairy for about 100 years before Georgie and Sam purchased the property. So what we've done is we've broken the bank there, we've put a contour in here, we've got one spillway here on Datum. You can see the water now
just starting to push out our spillway. And see how it's pushing out evenly. That's the purpose of using the laser level and having your spillways smack bang on level. So what this is going to do now is spill water from here, the next spillway there, it'll spill out there, and I have a spillway at the end. So the benefit of this now is we can now get into this pond, get the tractor in there. There's a green tractor trailer there. We're going to dig this whole pond out, and we're going to put all that fertility back up at the top of the hill and let the system recycle it. What do you think, Banksia?
So that's a smart way of using the fertility on your property. The terra firma pellets are thousands of dollars a tonne, like very expensive. So now we're going to use that build up of manure that's from the dairy for 100 years. We're actually going to dig that material up, take it all the way up to the top of the hill, and let the system recycle it again and start to grow more grass from. So this contour here, this was a real eye-opener for me. I'm not a real fan of plantations, even though I was an arborist for 10 years, but something I noticed with this contour that it blew my brain. When I was digging through here, I've never seen so many worms in my life. I mean, every scoop, there was thousands. It was insane. And for hours, I'm racking my brain and I'm thinking, what's different? Certified organic. This plantation's 30 years old. It hasn't had chemical use or anything for 30 years. The biology in there hasn't been touched for 30 years. When they've gone certified organic 5 or 6 years ago, that biology has just started working its way down, and now the worms that are in this paddock, there must have been 500 of these little wetland birds. Every time I was digging and I was putting dirt down, I was nearly squashing them, that they were just fighting for the worms. And I've never seen anything even close to that, and that's a perfect example of how important vegetation is, even if it's a monoculture of eucalypts. This is Larapinta in Molong. This is what we started with. This creek is trickling. There's not much water pushing through, but look, there's a little bit. That might be, at the best, a foot deep. So this is a structure that I put in. I put an angle on the structure so the water's flowing down like that, and it's hitting the rocks on an angle like that. That wouldn't even be hip height. All these rocks are from a rock picker 50 years ago. They were just in the paddock. It's cheaper to use what's on the farm than cart it in. So a small little structure like that. The reason I don't make it very high is I keep the fisheries off my back. That it's a stock crossing, and it's under 30 centimetres tall. So you got to learn to play the game. That's after we put that structure in. So now we have water backed up. You can see how wide the water is now. Same tree in the background. That water pushes 100 odd metres around the back, and what I've done a similar thing about 150 metres down. So what we're doing is we're pushing the water up, higher up in the floodplain, that now this water will start to move laterally with capillary attraction with backing up the floodplain. Now this would have done this without us, but for years of overgrazing, set stocking, see all this here, cattle and sheep walking in and out. Every time there's a flood, it only gets a little bit worse. Years ago, there would have been Phragmites and Kumbunji that would have slowed this system up enough that the water would have been backed up to here. But years and years of overgrazing and stock walking up and down the creek, it's down here now. So this is that crossing that I was just talking about. There it is there. You can see how far this has backed that water up from that first photo that was, that deep to maybe a foot. There's sections here that'd be 1.5 meters deep. Now you've got capillary attraction through your landscape where your water starts to spread this way. Has anyone seen a bucket of water and you put a newspaper in it and people say you can't make water run uphill? If you put that newspaper in a bucket of water and you leave it for 24 hours, the whole newspaper's wet. What do you think happens when the floodplain for 6 months or 12 months is 1.5 meters, the creek is 1.5 meters deeper? That water's now gone 500, 600, a kilometre sideways through capillary attraction. So this here is an area that I will say fencing off. In that last slide, you could see where the sheep and cattle had been walking on the edge and the damage. 2 years ago, they put this fence in. There's a fence that runs along there where those trees are. Look what's grown in 2 years. Careful where the animals go. That situation, just fencing it off at Charlie's at Little Plains, it's so far down the line, you pass the point of just throwing a fence around it. So this is same property. We've got a dam here that was catching a bit of water off the road, all running down the back of here, runs down the side of the driveway, floods the shearing shed. They run merinos. If you're trying to shear sheep and they're standing in mud, makes it hard for the shearer, and the fleece is worth less money. So what we've done here is fixed the back of this bank, dug this corner out, and I dug that corner out, fixed the bank so it's not flowing over the back. We put 3 ponds in. So this contour now, this is all catchment. All the rain that falls here will help fill that dam. They use that dam for stock water. Once that contour is full and the dam's full, the spillways start to activate. This pond fills, spills into the next pond, spills into the next pond, spills into the dam, comes around the corner here, goes down the contour with a couple of spillways that, look, you'd need 200 mil of rain now to flood their shearing shed. Now we put these in, slow the flow, slow the fertility loss, helping the grass grow. It's even greener. It's probably 4 months after I put this in, and this is in winter, and I've already noticed a difference with it. It's a bit greener on the property. And see these natural sequences? Rushes, rushes, rushes. It just tells me that water's moving down, and they're little steps in the landscape where the water's moving down, and it's just a little bit of a kick, and that's enough for the water just to settle there a little bit, pinch a bit of the oxygen, and allow these rushes to start to grow. So if I was to put another contour in, I'd put another one up here above the rushes. It's not a very complex process. So here's some chicken poo that we brought in. Reason I use chicken poo on this job, it's mow long, there's shedded birds and free range birds 15 k's down the road. We've got to use what's bang for buck, what's cost effective. So we brought 300 cubic metres of this in. We got the truck in dry weather as high up in the landscape as we could, tip these piles off. We'll leave these piles, they've been sprayed with a biodynamic prep. We won't spread this out of a fertiliser spreader. If you spread that 300 cubic metres out of the back of a fertiliser spreader, you lose about 50% of it back to the atmosphere. Whereas if you leave it in this pile like this, the water and the land, it'll spread the fertility out of this for the next 10 years, 15 years. Let Mother Nature do the work. This might not look like much, but I'll explain the details in it. This here is predominantly eucalypts. The elevation difference from here down to here is about 35 metres. It's almost all rocks and predominantly eucalypts. So what we have here now is you've got this nice green grass area. That's telling me that all the tannins and the salts and everything from here that's leaching out, it's going underneath this area here. And where do you think it's popping back up again? Where the rushes are. It's just a natural sequence in the landscape. When we learn to take our blinkers off and start to look for things, this is the things that we're looking for. And they're not just a little rush like that. They're about that high, and they're spiky, and they're unedible. They're pretty gnarly. It got to the point now where we've got to put a contour in here, and we're going to have to bring a big tractor with a mulching head on it and mulch it down because they've got out of control. Mulgranai Creek. Did I get it right, Jackie? This is Jackie's property. She's put a lot of faith in me, Jackie. When I got to the property, there was still a bit of chemical use. She was all ears. She listened to me, and she's backed me 100%. Ben over here is working with me. Put your hand up, Ben. Helping Jackie with the grazing. So we're going to turn this property around from having previous chemical use to running the whole joint without any chemicals. Thank you, Jackie. So this is what we started with. So same again, large catchment. This dam wasn't handling it. We had big bits of erosion around each corner. This was starting to get eroded. So put a contour out here, helping me make this catchment as well. But now when that's full, and this is full here, we're starting to spread the water out slowly. Same process. Helping with production, growing more grass, grow more grass, you can run more cattle and hopefully be a profitable farmer. So with this property, needed a bit of fertility. So we've done a little bit different this time. We get these weather damaged bales of hay. They're 450 kilos and they were $25. So we ran over to Dunedoo and picked up 2 truckloads. One was 41 bales and one was 40. So now we're going to start putting these bales higher up in the landscape to start making some fertility on farm. And the reason that I like to make the fertility on farm, yes, you can buy stuff in a bottle and it has a good success rate. But when you can make it up on a ridge up here, that's where the truck is. So we've got some chicken shit there to mix with the hay, so you've got a good carbon and nitrogen ratio with the hay. So now Ben's jumped in the tractor, ran all those bales up here. We've got bales up here, we've got bales at the water tank, and we've got bales there. Now we're going to put a contour the whole way around here and link this whole hill, that all that fertility and the straw and the chicken shit for the next 20 years will slowly rehydrate and put fertility over this area without using any spray rigs or anything fancy. We're just using the rain that falls from the sky and the hay and the chicken shit that we've mixed together. It's not very technical. He's been in the tractor bringing the bales up. I will say this is some steep, gnarly country, and the blokes that run tractors around this country got bigger balls than me. So here we have, these are the repair plants. When chemicals are used, the repair plants come out. So don't just go out there with more chemicals and spray them again. They're just a messenger. They're going to belt you over the head eventually and tell you what's going on and what's wrong. So we let these plants come in and they'll start to repair the soil. When they've done their job, they'll disappear and the more palatable plants will come up. And we'll accelerate this with the compost piles that are leaching down onto this area. After 6 or 12 months with that fertility leaching down towards them, they won't like that and they'll eventually move on. This is the KBD Valley. So this is a crossing that Stuart and I put in. So what we've got here is the water's coming from up this way. We've used timbers from trees that have fallen down. I've got a pipe that runs through the middle here. Why it's in a wing a bit like this is that this here is 20 centimetres lower than these timbers. These timbers here run up 20 centimetres, so it's on a bit of an angle like that. Water's coming down from here. This doesn't look like much, but it's about 150 metres downstream from where I put that crossing. And the reason I put these rocks in this order, they're from the size of about a wheelbarrow to a half a Toyota Corolla. So what happens is the water, it hits that rock, creates a bit of turbulence and hits this rock, it hits this rock, that hits this rock and that rock, and it just goes left to right, left to right. That slowdown of that water, just a little bit now when there's not a lot of a flow, in a flood or a high rainfall event, that slows that water down just enough that the exit water at this crossing that I'll show you in a minute, it doesn't wash it away. I'd love to talk to some engineers and some council people how they build their bridges, because I'll show you 100 mil of rain in the KBD Valley over the top of a crossing that was built less than 24 hours ago. So that's after 100 mil of rain. So you can see the crossings here. We just finished with the machines. We finished building this in the dark. A lot of water. See all the turbulence there? We've stacked rows and rows of rocks and we've put them in an order that creates this washing machine effect and creates this turbulence. This water here is leaving slower than what it came down from here. The exit water that hits your structure is what does the damage. You want to slow the water that's leaving, not the water that's arriving. That's 48 hours after the rain event, and this was a real eye-opener for me. When I was walking around with the angle of the crossing, so water's coming from this way and your crossing's like that. When you've got stones here, the water's coming down, and because you've got it on an angle, the water's actually forcing the stones down into the crossing. So I'll show you a photo of 20 mil road base that we put on that crossing that's had over a metre rain over it for 48 hours. I'll show you what's left of the 20 mil aggregate that we put down on this crossing. You'd think it'd wash it all away, wouldn't you? That's after that rain event. That's 20 mil aggregate. There's our gabion stones, sands underneath, gabion, top capped it with that. It's all to do with the way those timbers are, the angle that we put the pipe in, the rocks in the corner here. Has anyone been to a council crossing out in the sticks and it's concrete and you get to the crossing, but all the material in front of the crossing's washed away? Well, that's because the turbulence, once this backs up and comes out into these corners, it starts this circular effect. That's what chews it away and takes it away. That's why we have this wing of rocks here, and the way they're stacked in order with big, small, it stops that turbulent effect, like that spinning, and just creates the washing machine effect. Not very technical. How many people have, if they're farmers, have put crossings in, put aggregate in, put it level, the first flood washes it all away, and you just go and do it all again. The contractor loves it. Stuart, Andrews and Megan. Stuart's put a lot of effort into me. He's like a father figure to me. I wouldn't be standing here today without Stuart and Megan, so I'd like to thank him. He's put a lot of effort into me. Thanks, mate. That's it. Thank you. Sorry, a bit emotional, but thank you.